The day I found out my son had emptied my bank account, I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't even pick up the phone. I just sat there, staring at the faint blue light of the computer screen, watching the numbers fade into zero. It was a strange kind of silence, one that didn't ask for noise, only understanding. My tea had gone cold, the morning sun already slipping through the curtains, dust dancing in the light like tiny ghosts. I had always imagined that betrayal came with thunder, with shouting, slamming doors, and broken plates. But no, sometimes it arrives quietly, like an old friend who has lost their way and doesn't know how to speak anymore. That morning, betrayal sat beside me at the kitchen table and simply breathed. I remember whispering, "Jackson," under my breath, almost like a prayer. For a long moment, I waited for something inside me to explode, but all I felt was the weight of stillness pressing down on my chest. My son, my only child, the boy I had raised with trembling hands and endless nights. The boy whose laughter once filled every corner of this little house. It's strange how memories shift in color after you've been hurt. Everything becomes tinted with a kind of ache you can't wash away. I saw his 5th birthday again, the chocolate smeared on his cheeks, his small hands tugging at my apron as he shouted, "Mama, blow the candles with me." I saw his first day of school, how he turned around at the gate and waved until I disappeared from sight. Those memories used to warm me. That morning, they burned. Jackson had always been bright. Too bright, maybe. He had a way of talking that could convince anyone of anything. He got that from his father, a man who left when Jackson was 9, chasing a freedom that didn't include us. From then on, it was just me and Jackson against the world. I worked 2 jobs, one at the diner and one cleaning offices late into the night. My hands cracked from detergent, my back ached constantly, but every time I looked at him sleeping, I told myself it was worth it. When Jackson graduated college, I cried harder than he did. I remember clutching his diploma and whispering, "We did it, baby." That was the last time he held me like he meant it. After that, life started shifting in small, invisible ways. He met Tanya a year later, beautiful, polished, with the kind of confidence that makes everyone else in the room feel smaller. I tried to love her. God knows I did. But there was something about the way she looked at me like I was a stain she couldn't scrub off her new designer life. Still, I smiled through it all. I cooked for them, offered them my home when they needed to save for their own, even lent Jackson the down payment for his first business. That's what mothers do, right? We give, even when it hurts. But giving became a habit for me, and for Jackson it became an expectation. At first, it was small things. "Mama, can you help with the rent this month?" Or, "Mama, Tanya's mother is sick. We need to cover her medical bills." I didn't hesitate. Every withdrawal felt like love being put into motion. Every empty line on my bank statement was just another way of saying, "I'm proud of you, son." Then came the call that changed everything. It was a Sunday morning. I remember the smell of pancakes and the sound of the radio playing an old Motown song. Jackson's name flashed on my phone. I answered with a smile that didn't know what was coming. "Hey, sweetheart," I said. But the voice on the other end wasn't his. It was Tanya. Her tone was sweet to sweet. "Hi, Mrs. Reeves," she said. "Just wanted to let you know we're at the airport. Jackson didn't want to worry you, but we're heading to Paris with Mom for a few weeks, just to unwind." Paris. I laughed, because for a second I thought it was a joke. "Oh, that's wonderful," I said. "But how?" "He just told me last week he was short on money." She chuckled softly, the kind of laugh that hides something sharp underneath. "Oh, he figured it out. Don't worry, we'll bring you something nice from France." The call ended before I could ask another question. My hands were trembling when I opened my online banking app. What I saw felt unreal. The savings account I'd built over 20 years, every overtime hour, every skipped meal, every sleepless night gone, transferred in 3 separate transactions, each one signed digitally under his name. That's when the silence began. For 3 days, I didn't leave the house. I didn't call him, didn't report anything to the police. I just sat with the truth, letting it sink deep into the soil of my heart. When betrayal comes from strangers, it wounds your pride. When it comes from your own child, it wounds your soul. On the 4th day, I drove to the ocean, the same beach I used to take Jackson to when he was little. I sat on the same old bench, the wood rough and cold beneath my hands. The tide was high, the wind biting. I thought about walking into the water and letting the sea take what was left of me. But then, a memory stopped me. Jackson at 6 years old, chasing seagulls barefoot, turning to me with a grin that could light up the sky. "Mama, look, they're scared of me," he'd said. I remember whispering back then, "They're not scared, baby. They're just surprised by how loud love can be." That day, standing at the edge of the waves, I realized something. Love could still be loud, but this time, not with noise, with silence, with calm, with patience. So I turned back to my car, wiped my tears, and said to myself, "No police, no screaming, no begging. I'll let him face the kind of storm money can't buy his way out of." I didn't know how I'd do it yet, but I knew my revenge wouldn't be violent. It would be quiet, calculated, the kind of justice only a mother can deliver. I started with a notebook, a small red leather-bound one that had been sitting untouched in my drawer for years. I wrote the date at the top of the first page and one sentence beneath it. "Karma is not paid with violence. It is served with patience." Writing that line felt like taking my first real breath in days. I wasn't angry anymore, at least not in the loud, messy way anger usually feels. Mine had turned cold, focused, like a sharp needle threading through the fabric of something bigger. I made coffee, sat by the window, and started listing everything I remembered. Every payment, every transfer, every favor. I pulled out receipts, emails, text messages. The trail was longer than I expected. He had started taking small amounts almost a year before the final theft. Little withdrawals labeled as loan payback or business expenses. I had never noticed. Because when you love someone, you don't count. That afternoon, I called Walter. He'd been my friend for over 30 years, a retired police officer who now worked in private investigations. He answered on the second ring. "Ellie, you okay? You sound different." "I'm fine," I said quietly, "but I need your help." He didn't ask for details right away. That's the kind of man Walter was. Steady, careful, respectful. The next morning, he came by with a briefcase and that old leather jacket he never seemed to let go of. We sat at my kitchen table, the same place where Jackson had once done his homework. I slid the printouts toward him. "My son did this," I said, my voice steady. "And I don't want him to go to jail. I just want him to learn." Walter studied my face for a moment, then nodded. "You want him to feel the weight, not the punishment." "Exactly." He went through the documents carefully. "You have enough evidence here to prove misuse of funds, identity fraud, and digital theft. But if we go legal, he'll be charged." "You sure you don't want that?" I looked out the window. The sky was fading into dusk, gold brushing against gray. "No," I whispered. "I want him to face what he's done without anyone rescuing him. Not even me." Over the next few weeks, Walter worked quietly. He traced Jackson's financial activity, found the accounts he had opened overseas, and connected with a contact in international banking. He taught me how to file discreet fraud alerts, not to charge, but to freeze assets connected to suspicious activity. I signed everything under my own authorization, never hiding who I was. I wasn't ashamed of my actions. The night I clicked the final confirmation, I sat in the dark and whispered, "It's done." 2 days later, I received an email confirmation that his accounts had been locked. It was strange, really, how something so monumental could happen without sound. No explosions, no confrontations, just a quiet click of a button and a shift in the balance of power. A week passed, then another. Silence. Until one evening, my phone buzzed. It was an international number I didn't recognize. For a moment, I thought of ignoring it, but then curiosity won. "Hello?" I said. The voice on the other end was low, panicked. "Mama, it's me, Jackson." He was whispering, like he was hiding somewhere. "They froze my accounts. Tanya's furious. She's threatening to leave me. I can't use my cards, can't access my money. I don't know what to do." I could hear Tanya yelling in the background something about embarrassment and "how could you be so careless?" For a second, I imagined the scene. A fancy hotel lobby in Paris, her mascara smudged, him standing there in his pressed shirt, realizing he wasn't invincible after all. I didn't speak for a long moment. Then I said softly, "I didn't take anything from you, Jackson. I just stopped what you were taking from me." "Mama, please," he said, his voice breaking. "I made a mistake. I was going to pay you back. You drained everything," I said. "Everything I worked for. And now you're calling me because the woman you chose over me has finally shown you what loyalty really costs." He started crying. Real, guttural crying that I hadn't heard since he was a little boy. For a moment, my heart twisted, but I didn't let it win. "Son," I said gently, "you'll survive this. but you'll never forget it. And that's the point. Then I hung up. After that call, I didn't hear from him for months. Walter told me Tanya had left Jackson shortly after that. She'd gone back to her mother, taking whatever was left of their money with her. Jackson stayed in Europe, trying to work odd jobs, using cash wherever he could. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. I just wrote in my notebook, the lesson begins when the excuses end. Life became quieter after that. My days were filled with routine again, gardening, volunteering at the church, reading by the window. Yet, even in peace, something was shifting inside me. I was getting tired more easily, sleeping longer, losing weight. One morning, I woke up dizzy and found myself on the kitchen floor. The hospital visit confirmed what I already suspected: stage 3 lung cancer. The doctor's words fell like feathers, soft but heavy. "We can try treatment, Mrs. Reeves," he said, "but it's aggressive." I smiled. "I've fought bigger things, doctor." That night, I wrote in my notebook again, "A mother's love doesn't die. It just changes shape." Over the next weeks, I started putting my affairs in order, not out of fear but preparation. I organized the house, labeled files, even recorded voice notes on my phone for my lawyer. If I was leaving this world, I wanted to do it cleanly, with purpose. But there was one thing left undone: Jackson. Even after everything, my heart wouldn't rest. I didn't want him punished forever. I wanted him to understand, truly understand. So I began writing him a letter, not of anger, but of clarity. I started with, "My dear Jackson, I forgave you the moment you betrayed me, because I knew your crime wasn't greed, it was blindness. You didn't see the hands that raised you." The letter became my companion in those quiet, heavy nights. I wrote it slowly, sometimes stopping for hours just to stare at the paper, letting my thoughts settle like dust in a sunbeam. Each word felt like a piece of me being set free, a soft surrender that didn't come from weakness, but understanding. "My dear Jackson," I wrote, "there's a difference between love that protects and love that enables. I spent years saving you from consequences because I thought that was love. Now I see that love must also hold the mirror steady, even when the reflection hurts." I wrote about the nights I worked double shifts just to keep food on our table, about the days when he was little and all he wanted was to make me proud. And then, I wrote about the silence, the way it filled our house after Tanya came into his life, and how he began to forget where he came from. I didn't write to make him feel guilty. I wrote so he could understand the kind of love that doesn't stop even when it has been betrayed. When the letter was done, I sealed it inside an envelope and placed it in my red notebook. I knew somehow, he'd find it one day. Whether through guilt, grace, or fate, it didn't matter. What mattered was that my truth would wait for him, even if I couldn't. Meanwhile, the world outside kept moving, as if nothing had changed. But somewhere in Europe, my son's world was collapsing. Walter would occasionally check on him through his contacts. One day, he stopped by with an update. He set his coffee on the table, sighed, and said, "He's in trouble, Ellie. Real trouble." I looked up. "What kind?" "He's broke. Tanya left him for good. The investors in his so-called business want their money back. And the mother-in-law? She's telling everyone he stole from her too." I leaned back in my chair. "Stole from her?" Walter nodded. "Apparently he tried to cover some of his losses by borrowing under her name. It's getting ugly. There's talk of a fraud report." I didn't speak for a long moment. Then I whispered, "The snake bit its own tail." Walter studied me quietly. "You could help him, you know. You still have the power to undo what you started. Unfreeze the alerts. Give him a way home." I smiled faintly. "He already has a way home. It's just not the one he thinks." After he left, I sat by the window and watched the rain roll down the glass. My hands trembled as I reached for my teacup. Somewhere deep down, I knew my time was running shorter than I wanted to admit. But I wasn't sad. For the first time in years, I felt peaceful. The kind of peace that comes from knowing you've done what needed to be done, even when it hurt. Days turned into weeks. Then, one morning, I received an unexpected call from the U.S. Embassy in Paris. "Mrs. Reeves," the woman said, "your son has been detained for questioning in connection with multiple financial irregularities. He's requested to speak with you. Would you be willing to come to the embassy for a statement?" For a moment, I couldn't breathe. "He asked for me?" I whispered. "Yes, ma'am. He said he needs to see his mother." I closed my eyes, tears stinging. "All right," I said softly. "Tell him I'll come." 2 weeks later, I was on a plane for the first time in my life. Walter insisted on accompanying me. "You shouldn't travel alone," he'd said, though I think he knew I needed someone to catch me if my heart broke again. Paris was cold and gray when we arrived. The embassy was all glass and marble, sterile and foreign. As I walked through the security gates, I felt a strange calm. My body was weak, but my spirit was steady. I was no longer the mother who begged her son to call. I was the woman who had learned how to let go. They led me into a conference room. Jackson was already there sitting in a corner, his once confident posture now collapsed into shame. His hair was longer, his clothes wrinkled. He looked up when I entered, and for a moment, he didn't recognize me. Then his eyes widened. "Mama?" he said, voice cracking. I nodded slowly. "Hello, Jackson." He stood up, trembling. I didn't know you'd come." "I know," I said. My voice was calm, almost tender. "You didn't know a lot of things." He stepped closer, then stopped as if afraid to move further. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I ruined everything." I looked at him, really looked. The boy I once held, the man he had become, and the stranger I had to let suffer. "You ruined nothing," I said softly. "You only exposed what was already broken." He began to cry. "Please, Mama, I'll make it right. I'll work. Pay it all back, just help me out of this." I shook my head gently. "No, son. This is the part where you learn. I can't fix this for you. But you're my mother," he shouted, his voice echoing in the sterile room. "Yes," I said, my eyes wet but unwavering. "And that's why I can't save you anymore." The embassy official entered, breaking the silence. "Mrs. Reeves," she said, "if you wish to provide a statement, we can proceed now." I reached into my bag and pulled out an envelope, the one I had written weeks ago. "I won't make a statement," I said, "but I'll leave this with him." Jackson looked confused. "What's that?" "A letter," I said. "The last thing I owe you." He tried to reach for my hand, but I stepped back. "You were my life, Jackson," I said quietly, my voice shaking, "but I was never yours." There was a hush in the room. Even the embassy staff seemed frozen. A reporter nearby, who had overheard the exchange, lowered her camera with tears in her eyes. Someone must have filmed it, because a week later, that clip was everywhere, millions of people online calling me the mother who taught forgiveness without a word. But for me, it wasn't about forgiveness or fame. It was about peace. When I returned home to Los Angeles, I unpacked my suitcase, brewed myself a cup of tea, and placed my red notebook on the table. The house was quiet again. The same kind of quiet that used to feel lonely. But now, it felt full, like the silence itself was finally proud of me. The days after I came back from Paris felt softer, slower, as if time itself had decided to walk beside me instead of racing ahead. The air smelled like rain that never came, and every morning I woke to the same sound, the hum of the old refrigerator, the faint creak of the front door when the mail slipped through. It was a kind of stillness I had longed for my entire life. The video of our embassy meeting had gone viral, though I didn't know it until Walter showed me. He brought over his tablet one afternoon, smiling like a proud uncle. "You're famous, Ellie," he said. "Millions of people saying you're the strongest mother they've ever seen." I watched the clip quietly the moment Jackson looked at me, desperate. And the way I told him, "You were my life, but I was never yours," hearing it again didn't make me sad. It made me honest with myself. I had spent a lifetime measuring love by sacrifice. But real love, the kind that endures, sometimes means letting go, even when your heart doesn't want to. I didn't tell anyone about the diagnosis except Walter and Pastor Helen from church. My strength was fading, but I didn't want pity. I just wanted my remaining time to feel like something that belonged to me. Most mornings, I'd sit on the porch with a blanket around my shoulders, watching the world wake up, kids walking to school, neighbors watering their lawns, the mail truck slowing at every house. There was beauty in that simplicity. After years of noise, manipulation, and disappointment, I had found peace in quiet repetition. Then one morning, I noticed something strange. A white paper bag sitting on my porch chair. Inside were 2 glazed donuts, my favorite, and a folded note. "Thought you might like these, Jay." My breath caught. I looked around, but the street was empty. The handwriting was shaky but familiar. I didn't cry. Not right away. I just held the note and whispered, "He found his way home." Over the next few weeks, the small gestures continued. A flower left by the gate, a bag of groceries, a new teacup wrapped in newspaper. He never knocked. He never called. He just appeared through kindness. It was as if he was trying to rebuild our relationship without words, one act at a time. Sometimes I'd hear footsteps on the porch late at night, hesitant, soft, and I'd sit in the dark listening. I knew it was him. And though part of me wanted to open the door and pull him into my arms, another part knew I couldn't. Not yet. Forgiveness is not a door you fling open. It's a path you walk, barefoot and slow. One evening, as the sky turned orange, I found a small wooden box left on my doorstep. Inside was a photographed Jackson, maybe 5 years old, sitting on the beach with a sandcastle between us. I smiled through tears. Beneath the photo was another note. I remember now, Mama. I remember everything you gave me. That night, I wrote back, not to give it to him, but to say what my heart needed to release. Love is not demanded, it is given. If you've learned that, you're not lost anymore. I folded the paper and placed it inside my red notebook beside the letter ID given him in Paris. I didn't know if he'd ever see it, but I hoped he would someday, when he was ready. My health declined quickly after that. The treatments stopped working, and my energy faded like candlelight in a draft. Still, I refused to let death feel tragic. I had made peace with my story. Every ache, every mistake, every tear, they had all led me here, to this calm acceptance. One afternoon, I called Walter over. We sat in the garden, surrounded by the last bloom of autumn roses. Promise me something, I said. Anything, he replied. When I'm gone, give Jackson my red notebook. Don't send it, give it to him yourself. Look him in the eye and tell him I still believe in him. Walter nodded, tears glistening in his eyes. You're too kind, Ellie. No, I said softly. I'm just finally free. The final night came quietly. I remember the sound of rain tapping against the window and the faint scent of lavender from the candle I lit. I wrote one last entry in my notebook. I don't regret loving him. I only regret forgetting to love myself sooner. Then I closed it, placed it on my nightstand, and drifted into sleep, the peaceful kind that doesn't ask for tomorrow. When Walter found me the next morning, I was still smiling. News of my passing spread quietly, but somehow Jackson was among the first to arrive. The neighbors said he stood on the porch for nearly an hour before walking in. He found the house exactly as I'd left it, neat, warm, filled with photographs and sunlight. Walter was there, waiting. He handed Jackson the red notebook. She wanted you to have this. Jackson sat down at the kitchen table, the same one where I had once balanced bills, where he had done his homework, where I had stared at the screen the morning he betrayed me. His hands trembled as he opened the notebook. He read the first page. Karma is not paid with violence. It is served with patience. Then he turned to the last note I had written for him. I still believe in you, son. That's when the tears came. Not the desperate kind that beg for forgiveness, but the kind that come when you finally see the truth, not of what you've lost, but what you've done. He stayed there until sunset, reading every word I had ever written. When he finally stood, he whispered, "Thank you, Mama," and walked outside. The evening light caught his face, and for the first time in years, he looked like the boy I used to know, fragile, human, and real. Later, Walter told me he visited my grave every week after that, not to cry, but to talk. He'd bring coffee, sometimes those same glazed donuts, and sit quietly for an hour before leaving. People say revenge is sweet, but they're wrong. The sweetest thing is redemption, the kind that doesn't scream or punish, but transforms. My revenge had never been to destroy him. It was to help him see himself clearly. And in the end, that was enough. Sometimes life doesn't give you closure in the way you imagine. It doesn't come wrapped in apologies or tied with a bow of understanding. It comes quietly through peace that replaces pain, through silence that softens anger, and through acceptance that heals what words never could. I used to think betrayal was the worst kind of pain. But I learned something deeper. The true pain is realizing how much of yourself you gave to someone who never truly saw you. Yet even that realization carries a gift. It teaches you where to stop bleeding for people who don't know how to hold you. If you're listening to my story tonight, maybe you've loved someone who broke you too. Maybe your son, your partner, your friend, someone you trusted turned your kindness into convenience. And maybe, like me, you've wondered if revenge is the only way to make the pain stop. But revenge is just grief wearing armor. It doesn't free you. It keeps you bound to the very person who hurt you. What frees you is letting go, not because they deserve peace, but because you do. I forgave my son, not to absolve him, but to unchain myself. I learned that sometimes, the most powerful revenge is living a life they no longer have the privilege to ruin. To smile again, to sleep in peace, to laugh without bitterness. That's the kind of vengeance no one can steal. When people remember me, I don't want them to think of the woman who was betrayed. I want them to remember the mother who turned her heartbreak into wisdom, her silence into strength, and her pain into peace. Because life isn't about what people take from you. It's about what you choose to rebuild afterward. And if you are standing in that dark place right now wondering if you'll ever heal, I want you to remember this. Even the deepest wounds can grow flowers if you stop reopening them. So take a breath, forgive, not because they asked you to, but because you deserve to finally be free.